Welcome back to another FERA podcast. I'm Millie and I'm joined today by our guest, Josie Gardner. Josie did our first masterclass back in February and it was so substantive and like so interesting and such a journey reflecting all about the mother line. And I really recommend watching the replay. It's raining so heavily now. I hope we're gonna I hope our internet will survive. But yeah, you can find the link in the description. I'll post it in the bio. And yeah, Josie, do you want to just start by giving us a bit of a background?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and excited to chat to you, Millie. So my background is in visionary women's leadership, and I have a brand new business that is just in the launch stage. Oh, I love that we have Larry here. We are in a brand new launch stage of the Institute for Visionary Women, which our mission is really to bridge personal healing with social change for a new model of visionary change making for women. So that's a little overview.
That's amazing. I know from your bio, though, that you have a PhD in peace studies, specializing in collective trauma healing. Is that right? Was that your...
That's right. Yes.
And how did you end up there? Like, what was your undergrad? What was the journey or the thread that led you to that work?
So I originally, a long time ago, started out in psychology and creative writing, and then left university for a few years and traveled and lived and worked all over the world for a while, and then went back into my undergrad. After doing a lot of community work in a bunch of countries, I decided to go back to do an undergrad in a joint major in political science and development studies. So I had my undergrad in development studies, and then for my honors degree, I started specializing in peace and conflict studies, studying political violence and collective trauma. The specialization in collective trauma came a little bit later. I decided to specialize in that for my PhD. And so I had spent a lot of time in India and had met and worked with a lot of amazing change makers, mostly youth peace workers in India, and spent a lot of time in Kashmir on the border near the border of India, Pakistan. And so this collaborative project started between me and an organization who I've now worked with for 8 years. And so we did a collaborative, very practice-based research project that spanned 4 years, well, 5 years of my PhD. And that allowed me to specialize in conflict transformation, peace building, and really just looking at the mechanisms of change on inner and outer levels. My research was all about how inner transformation and outer transformation intersect, and how what visionary leadership is. So my PhD really set the groundwork for a lot of my work that I'm doing now.
It's so like, it's not niche, but it is, you've like made it so unique at the same time. Are you always working, well, were in your PhD, was it always with like groups and communities, or was there like an individual? Yeah, what was the on the ground work like actually looking like?
So a lot of my work before my PhD was with communities. I worked also with the refugee communities in Sydney for many years, doing refugee policy research and community activism, community change making, small workshops, interviews, research, right, like on the ground research, facilitating a lot of workshops with vulnerable populations. And in India, it was working with youth peace leaders in deep transformative retreats. So we brought together all sorts of incredible people from two sides of conflict. And it was just a really deep, immersive, transformative experience looking at the socio-political conflict and the psycho-spiritual inner conflict and trauma healing. So Yeah, really sensitive work, really transformative, inspiring work. So I've worked with a range of people from, you know, peace leaders to just everyday people who are interested in showing up for whatever kind of work and transformation or community space. So yeah, mostly groups, but I've also worked a lot with, in India, I have a close relationship with a few leaders of the organization that I partner with. And yeah, they're all sort of my friends as well, my colleagues and my friends, and also just epic, inspiring women. So that's a lot of
Yes.
my like lifeblood and source, is like working with just women that really floor me in so many ways.
That's so interesting. Is it yeah, I feel like, as you know, there's a conflict that's pretty close to home for me in the Israel-Palestine conflict. My husband's Israeli. It's a big part of our, yeah, it's discussed a lot, and it's always really encouraging, and it's been really beautiful to see when you have those like cross-cultural or like those healing spaces that are bringing people together to just like meet each other and talk and be human beings in front of each other and be, like bear witness to each other in person, and to just strip away all of the other bullshit. Not that that's like also not important, and it's all really valid, but at the end of the day, yeah, if you're not getting kind of any interpersonal relations going, you're just never going to get anywhere. It's just not like that. It's not like politics is not what's going to fix these big, complicated, complex problems at the end of the day, is it? It's like populations of people healing and starting to like know each other as human beings as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, like with really complex historical violence, though, I'm imagining it's the same. It's a lot of time. I mean, although the violence can still be present, the history of it is the sticky part that people can't unstick from. And it's like he said, she said, that goes on for years, and no one can even remember what happened originally, or what you weren't even there, and it's just like carrying this weight through people's lineages and through families and through their lives and through the society. Is where do you even like start untangling that? Like, how do you even get to the bottom of that?
Yeah. And I think that that is exactly what war and conflict is. It is cycles and generations of really messy cycles of violence and um, personal, it all comes down to like deeply personal identities, betrayals, experiences. And that, I completely agree that that's the messy work of healing the world. And that's why I spent 5 years really parsing out this question of why does it matter so much to do interpersonal healing in a context of massive, ongoing, decades-long political violence. I've worked a little bit with Israel Palestine as well, and it's a very similar context in some ways to Pakistan, India, and Kashmir. And yeah, a lot of that is uncovering identities. Uncovering identities of collective victimhood and how that starts to become something bigger and beyond individual identity. So looking at, how collective identity forms and how can you break that down, and looking at personal grievances and how those form into collective grievances. So it's honestly the messiest work, and it's completely nonlinear, and it's like 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. And it's, I love that. Like for me, there's such a difference of doing that kind of work than, looking at the policy level, which is important also as the context of the work. But for me, being in the raw, messy humanity of conflict is, that's like the essence of life. You experience the full spectrum of humanity, all the beauty and the pain and the suffering, and to be able to untangle the threads, one thread at a time, is what I love and what I find so inspiring. So there is no easy how-to manual. It's just like get really good at sitting in the mess and listening and tracking patterns and yeah, starting to understand how those patterns move and where the entry points are.
Yeah, and it becomes so loaded, as you say, when like a cultural identity literally becomes based around collective trauma or collective victimhood or collective otherness, that potentially they weren't even necessarily a group 200 years ago, but have thus become one, or whatever it is to that unique situation. And then how do you, no one wants to like live in the trauma story as their identity, but without it, especially if it's been going on for so long, what is the other now? What is the alternate story you have for your identity and your people and your culture? Yeah, I guess as well, like you're a little bit like me, like you're away from your family, and like we've had discussions as well before about cultural identity and where do you feel strong culturally, and I don't have a strong cultural identity in the same way that other groups do. And can you even like fully relate or understand or get into like the grittiness of a cultural yeah, like how sticky problems really are if you don't understand what like I don't have this big connection to land, so it's really hard for me to relate to like even though I understand it on an intellectual level, I don't understand what it is to be so attached to a piece of land that you would die for it, or you would, go to these lengths or be and inflict violence on others in order to like make sure that that place is yours. But that's where that's how ingrained like narratives can become in people's lives. Yeah, not a question, just a yeah, it just seems like such sticky work. I'm so glad there's people like you that are like, doing this.
Yeah, it's such a good point. It's exactly what it feels like to be able to be able to deeply come into contact with stories that are completely different than your own and find deep shared humanity. And also in conflict work, there's a huge importance on, bringing often in really intractable conflicts, bringing in identities that are completely separate from the context at hand, in order to, be in a mediation role. And I find it really humbling to be in a room where there are such different lived experiences and every single one of them is entirely and completely valid and not wrong. And that to me is so important, to be able to sit in the prism of human experience and to know that everyone's version of truth and reality to them is entirely and completely valid. So then how do you start to come to understand each other when perspectives are so entrenched? And a lot of people I work with have no idea what they're, that they are carrying some kind of collective identity as their own, or and that's a really interesting process to watch the barriers and walls break down as people come into contact with other stories that they never otherwise would make space to come into contact with. And that's like the cracking open. There are always like big breakthroughs and lots of tears, and it's like big emotional work. And
Yeah,
I
I've
just
actually,
feel alive in that.
yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but like I've literally had that experience with my husband of his experiences and identities being one thing, and then after I spent time in Palestine and came back, of just this like unraveling of, okay, what was true, what is still true, and even though now all these other things are true, this is still true for me and my experiences. And just to see how related to not only identity but your own personal responsibility for contributing to something that you didn't even understand that you were contributing to
Right.
in in a way, you know, like you're literally doing what you think is the right thing to do. That's what you've been taught. That's what the propaganda has told you. That's what your country, your parents, everyone has told you to do. And then to be like, hang on a second, my whole world is wrong, or not wrong, but like upside down now, and not what I thought it was. And then refinding your way through that, because still, as you say, like in essence, there is still a validity to the experience of both sides, 100%. And that's why these things persist, right? Because it's not a black and white, oh, you guys are wrong, stop doing that thing. It's so much more complicated than that. And I feel like, I mean, I'm mostly speaking of the Palestine-Israel conflict, but I imagine it's the same as other conflicts. When you know a little bit more about it and you're not just getting the black and white Instagram version of the right and wrong, it's really funny to kind of like see people making statements or saying things. And I'm like, but you don't even get the whole picture. And until you get the whole picture, what you're saying is not even going to land anywhere close to home or in any place that's going to be productive to ending this. And in fact, it's even more inflammatory because you're totally discounting someone else's true, literal, valid life experience. You're saying that they're wrong, or that they're, and it's just so not productive. At the same time, I have this discussion with a really close friend of mine. She's deeply involved in like the UN and human rights and Aboriginal affairs and all these things. And she always has been. And she's always been extremely black and white about, no, like they should stop. This is wrong, whatever it is, whatever conflict she's involved in. And we always go down rabbit holes because I'm like, but until you're not gonna, this is not helping, and you're just enraging the other side. And actually the, violators of the violence are the ones that, no, you don't need to like placate them and hold their hand, but you do need to understand them, and you do need to have some level of like, I wouldn't even say compassion, but understanding, before you're going to get anywhere. And you adding violent rhetoric and words to the conversation because you feel like you need to like make a big stand for your belief. It feels helpful, and yet like I don't see it to be so in terms of actually ending a conflict and finding resolution amongst peoples. All you're doing is like, making the other side, I say the other side, but like, you know what I mean, the perpetrators of the situation, the violence, even more like steadfast and resolved that they're on the right path and they're correct, because you do seem against them, and that is the story that they've been told by their government, and the world hates us and wants us, blah blah blah. But then at the same time, like, victims of violence do deserve for us to stand up really strongly for them, and to be really vocal and be really direct with our protest of the injustice that they're experiencing. It's just a funny thing to see it play out, because I feel like we've seen the Israel-Palestine thing come to a head a lot with obviously after October 7th, and it's been really public, and it's been, you can see the kind of like Instagrammy sharey people that like think they're doing the right thing, and I'm like, like you obviously have no idea what you're talking about. But also
Right.
at the same time, it's how can you say no, you're doing the wrong thing? Because you want there to be more attention on this cause, and how to educate people so it's not just clickbaity, or not just like they're going to lose attention on that in a couple of months and they'll forget it's happening because it's not in their sphere anymore. It's just I've because I've been with my husband now for almost 10 years, and I've been like weaving in and out of this all of this stuff. It's just been so interesting to see, and to try to like, what is the best way of doing this? How do we move forward with this? How are we going to find a resolution to this, or like some end to these injustices and the violence? Like it, in a way, it feels harder than ever. It feels more complex than ever to try to get to that point now. Now that we have social media, now that like voices that are not necessarily totally maybe shouldn't be in the spotlight are being amplified, and ideas and concepts are like getting out of control and have a life of their own on social media that like weren't even true or didn't even really happen. I don't know. It's
I think you're like really hitting the nail on the head with social media being a huge issue and a really inflammatory space, because you made a few really amazing points. I think that there's a sort of black and white approach, which I think is very easy in social media and Instagram, and there's a lot of room for performative activism. There's a lot of room for really inflammatory, reactionary, what I call reactivism, which I think a lot of activism is just reactivism. And so there's the culture is really supporting this really naive black and white approach, and the work I do, I see as just shades of gray. It's about coming into how can we sit in like the grayness of human experience, and that's really hard in a context where we're like everything is like a shareable like tweet or a this, like it's everything is this simplified version. And like you said, people who people who genuinely mean really well and want to contribute to their voice to the issue, which is beautiful, but in some ways, how can that actually worsen the problem? And that's a lot of my work, and a lot of my work now with the Institute for Visionary Women is really untangling the threads of how can we be change makers in the world in a way that is not falling into toxic patterns of activism or cancel culture that are entrenching the problems and creating more polarization, even though the intention is good, even though the intention is often to stand up for one side or the other and to stand up for justice. The methods are often perpetrating the issue rather than getting to the heart of things, which requires time, patience, understanding, like it's far beyond a lot of people's capacity, So,
Yes.
we're losing the space for constructive dialogue in our culture, and that's a really huge problem. So, there's no one answer for it all.
No, and also we're losing those. We've given the third space to social media, not the home and not the workspace. Our third space where we're hanging out with our friends or having deep discussions. We're not sitting around a fire anymore without phones in our hands, talking to each other about big ideas. We've offloaded that to social media sphere and everything that entails, And I would say, like, I don't think most people realize that they don't have that third space in their life anymore, where they are just discussing big shit with their friends, and each other, and going really deep and allowing the time and space for that. It's really, really, I don't think we realize what we're missing by not having that space in our life, because we feel like our life is so full of content and people and conversations and stuff all the time. And I would also say that trauma has become a bit of a buzzword these days too. I feel like traditionally vastly underused, and many people who definitely had experiences of trauma were not given the benefit of that word for many years. And then maybe in the last decade, it's kind of switched, maybe longer if you've been in that kind of world. And it feels really overused these days. So I feel like a lot of people feel like their capacity as well is diminished because they feel like they're experiencing trauma or wounding or the need for healing constantly, and don't have the ability to like get out of themselves and like offer that energy back to spaces that like genuinely are experiencing trauma and need it. But I think in that way as well, because of the hyper individualization that we have in our Western societies these days, you think of trauma as like a deeply personal individual thing, like it's my trauma from my experiences in my world. But really, like, we're all carrying all sorts of lineage trauma. I wish there was another word, like lineage baggage and stuff from our societies and shit from our communities and our governments. And, there's so much stuff that we're all carrying. How do you as an individual yeah, how do you disentangle, like, okay, that's definitely mine, this is not, or this is, and that's worth working on, or this is not really trauma, it's just a shit thing that happened to me and I need to just like move on with my life. I feel like collectively we're all a little bit stuck in that space now of like, I'm traumatized, like, well, no, you're not really, but like, yeah, something like, life is not what you thought it would be and you should make changes, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we're all kind of just like in that adolescence of trauma right now and trying to work out like what to do with it all now that we've come to acknowledge it on a much grander scale.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's an important conversation, and you're very right. It's, as someone who's been in the trauma space for many, many years in a professional capacity, it is sometimes a little bit worrying to sort of see, um, yeah, the trauma explosion in ways that are not always productive. And at the same time, it's beautiful to be having this conversation, a conversation that is long overdue, and using language and terminology that, for previous generations was completely off the table. And like the trauma of today is largely caused from the repression of the trauma a generation ago. So it's like, thank gosh, this is like, this is all in the open, and like this is being talked about now in a so I think the balance is somewhere in the middle, and I think the pendulum swing will find equilibrium at some point. But I think it's so true that we're all sitting in this mess. Like we've all unveiled all of our wounding, and we're kind of like sitting with it all on the table. Like, okay, what now? What do we do with this whole like shitstorm in front of us? And yeah, I think that question is one that I sort of live with all the time, and was a big part of my research of, like how can we understand and untangle and map trauma? And that was kind of the approach to my work, is like, how do you actually map and identify patterns of fragmentation, patterns of separation across scales, on an individual level, on a collective level, on a cultural, social. And so, yeah, that it was many years of actually sort of mapping patterns of like fragmentation, and where do those parts lie, and how can they become whole again. And so I think as a culture, as like a global culture, we're kind of sitting in the mess of that right now and not really sure how to move forward and what's mine and what's, everyone's a little bit lost and fumbling in the dark right now. But I'm someone who's an advocate of like, bring everything to the surface and at least it's all bubbling to the surface. And I think we definitely need a lot of tools and a lot of spaces to now start to process all of that and really untangle it. And I think, yeah, I'm hoping in the next like generation ahead that we get those we reclaim those spaces that we're talking about, like those spaces of dialogue and intentional work, and not just like the sort of virtue signaling and performative activism of the trauma world, which is really harmful, I think. Yeah.
Do you think though that we can kind of experience, I was going to say like a full wholeness, but like a really not really kind of heal ourselves in the societies that we live in today, in this like capitalistic, hyper individual destruction of the world around us? Is it even possible for us to have kind of like that level of transformation without a societal transformation? Can you have one without the other?
I don't think so. I think those things are inextricable. Like, I think we are shaped by our culture in the same way that our culture is shaped by us, and it's like a chicken or the egg problem. That's like, where do you make the start and the stop? And so I think like as we evolve, we have to be evolving our systems. And I deeply believe in inside out change, that like the healing starts on a micro level, the healing starts on a relational and interpersonal level. and expands and ripples outward into systemic change. I don't think systems are going to change just by top-down measures. That's completely unsustainable and hollow. And, we are the lifeblood of systems. They don't exist separately from us. They grow beyond us as something, greater than the sum of their parts, but we are the systems we create. So yeah, I think, healing capitalism and healing modernity is the exact same thing as healing ourselves. I don't think we can ever separate the two. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, I totally agree, but it puts me in a bit of a like, oh, we're fucked then, head
Yeah.
like, maybe at least in my lifetime then, or maybe by the end of our lives, we'll start to see some really progressive change happening. But yeah, I personally, like, I'm not much of a internalized trauma person. Like, a lot has happened in my life, but I'm very inspired by my husband, who's also had a lot happen in his life, and he just kind of gets on with it. Maybe it's like stoicism. I don't think it's repression. Seems pretty healthy, and like we have our shit. But I did go through those years of like having everything bubble up to the surface, right? And really like looking at my life and being like, oh my God, okay, that's why this is this. And, had those investigative years. And I'm of the opinion that like I would prefer just to get on with living my life and trying to live with as much joy as I can and not let those things like, fully drag me down. Totally, given that I haven't experienced like a really high level of trauma in my life. And I'm not speaking to those people at all. That's a whole other conversation. But I do see around me, particularly in the kind of alternative communities that we're both a part of or have our toes in, people get quite addicted to healing and they get addicted to their trauma. And then any reason for them not to change themselves, for example, like as long as there's capitalism, I'm just going to feel like shit. And like possibly, and yet like you've incarnated, in Australia or wherever you are in the West in a pretty relatively privileged situation. I am of the opinion that at some point life goes on and you're going to miss it if you stay addicted to your trauma. So, even within the systems that I'm a part of, I totally agree that like until there's change on a massive stage, we're probably not going to be as collectively healthy as we should be. And yet, like nothing's going to change if we don't change ourselves first. Exactly what you said, And when I was like, when I was a university student, I feel like you have a very grand view of the world, and we all want to be global players and we want to make big change and stuff. And for me now, it's like so much more localized. It's so much more within my circle, my family, my community. What am I doing, like without words, with actions, that's actually like walking the talk of the change that I want to see within my community. And it's not perfect. And I've had this conversation with Shaka recently of like, fuck, I just don't live by so many of the values that I still hold, true to myself and important to myself, but for convenience or because we don't have time or because money or whatever the reason, I've let go of a lot of things. And I am working on like realigning those back in my life and, making sure that there are things that we're passing on to our children and this and that. But at the end of the day, I don't see, particularly for me personally, that I'm going to have a greater impact than like making myself here, like a strong and like together and whole and well and joyful and having fun and doing the right thing and being a good person in my community. Like I don't see that there's more to do, especially in this season of my life anyway. But yeah, then you remember all the shit going on in the world and you're like, oh, we're fucked. What are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think you just like distilled the essence of everything in that beautifully. Like, and I am with you 100%. At the end of the day, all we can do is to be responsible for the way that we are in relationship to the rest of life. And that is, to ourselves, to our communities, to our lineage. Like that is like the quintessential repair work of the world. And And, you know, all change is going to begin from relationship and the relationships closest to us. And I've had a similar journey to you, as being like in the sense of you know, wanting to really work at a like policy and global scale for a long time, and sort of over the years like shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and sort of finding out through explorations in all of these different worlds, community work and policy work and advocacy work and all of the things, and coming back to the distillation of, oh, actually, like all any of us can really do is live with integrity, and with like also, you know, integrity and responsibility, but also like joy and pleasure. And
Mhm.
like you said, like you know, that people can, I think it's easy to become really attached to the suffering and the victimhood, and um the despair, and which is so, you know, contained and closed off. And it's like, well, what kind of world do we want to create? Like, I want to
Mhm.
create a world of like joy and pleasure and lightness, and that can easily slip into spiritual bypassing. So I think it's a very
Mhm.
slippery slope. Like,
Yeah.
how can we be alive, like in our full aliveness and like wholeness and joy and passion and purpose and meaning in ourselves? um and a lot, and like you touched on, like being in that place often does take a previous phase of excavation, of like bringing all your shit to the surface. And you know, often there is that is required to be able to live in our wholeness and joy. Like, often that does take some like dirty work, you know. um but like, how can we arrive there in ourselves, and like, and that is the sustenance
Mhm.
of like deep change. And I think people don't like that answer, because it's like, well, how can I exist when there's so much wrong in the world? Like, how can I just exist and like not do anything? And we're obsessed with doing and fixing, and it's, which is sort of, it sort of unravels the whole thing. Like, the
Yeah.
a lot of the problem is our obsession with like doing and fixing and solving this problem and quick, and change this and change that. And we want that immediacy, and we don't want to be able to like, it's much easier to be involved in like signing this petition or complaining about this thing or critiquing this system or whatever, than it is to like take radical responsibility of
Mhm.
yourself and your relationships and your communication, and the way that you show up for your community and your family. Like, that's actually like the hard, messy work oftentimes, you know.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you brought up the spiritual bypassing thing, because I feel like we are from a specific generation of women that came into like the wild woman and reclaiming our wild and free selves through festivals and Instagram. And now we've kind of graduated from that. And I'm really curious to see like what we're all going to do next, you know, and where we're going to take all those lessons and all that kind of, yeah, the meatiness of what we've learned from that and take it out of the fluffiness. And
Yeah.
I spoke to Nadi about this last week. How do we like mature from the aesthetics and the fluffiness and the spiritual bypassing into something that's more genuine and a more relatable space that continues to serve women and, you know, what women need and women's reclamation of themselves for sure, you know. But yeah, your work kind of now is residing in that feminine embodiment space as well. So how's your relationship to that space now?
Yeah, I think you said it well, in like capturing the essence of this like collective maidenhood that's needed, that needs this like rite of passage into like the mother, the
Mhm.
like the grounded like mother who can like birth something real and tangible. And I think that's also mirrored my journey into, progressively into the work I've been doing, of becoming more and more kind of like bothered by the sort of mass spiritual bypassing that I've witnessed over time and participated in, for
Yeah.
sure. Like, you know, like in my younger self, like how much easier is it to just be like, everything is light and everything is love, and like that's, you just need to let things go, and like
It
there's
hasn't
so much.
Yeah.
Right. Like nothing, everything is exactly as it should be. And like it's so, it's so easy to live by that. And so I understand the appeal, and I understand how seductive that is to be like, wow, I can just unburden myself and just you know, like live in this like free way. But I honestly think that's like a distorted form of narcissism. And it is like a very self-centered, like that is like capitalist spirituality at its finest, in the sense of like it's this hyper individual like abdication of responsibility. And so I think the maturation that you're talking about is like, for me anyway, like for my answer to that um has been to bring my two worlds together of like, participating in women's work and in women's spaces for so long, um, and to sort of to be part of that and to witness that sort of
Yeah.
shadow side of like feminine embodiment. Um, and then, I guess to back up and maybe frame this a little bit better, I think my experience has been one of very living in these like two completely different worlds, like living in this very split self, which was really like a fragmented self. And one side of me was deeply involved for so long in women's embodiment spaces, in women's spiritual women's work, and the other side of me was has been in academia for 15 years, working in that space. And so these sides of me sort of, I was like living this double life almost, for a lot of that time. And um it felt very much like a double life. And I think my natural path and my truth has been in bringing those sides of me together into integration within myself, and then also, creating a body of work that is like the merging of those two selves and those two modalities. So what does women's embodiment look like in the context of you know social change and collective trauma healing? Like what does women's embodiment serve in the context of like the socio-political context? So for me, like that's been my answer to that
Yeah.
space. And on one hand, I've on the sort of like socio-political side, it's been a lot of my disillusionment with activist spaces, and like really toxic sides and forms of activism, and really black and white thinking, and stepping back from those spaces. And on the other side, it's been really like the spiritual bypassing and stepping back from that. So I've sort of found my way into this, into now what feels to me like like an attempt to answer this question through the work that I'm doing, of how can all of this like personal development work that we've been doing actually serve the whole, and get beyond our own yoga mats and our own
Yes.
like our own like self-contained healing spaces, and like how can we actually show up in the world. And so yeah, that's sort of where the evolution has been for me.
I love that. I love that you brought up the both sides, like the academic and this kind of more spiritual side. It's something I wanted to ask you about anyway. And I feel like I've kind of brought this up in each of the podcasts I've done recently, because I come from that space as well. Like I have a scientific academic background, and then I had all these years of like trying to unlearn all the conditioning that I had from academia, but at the same time, like keeping a level of I was going to say cynicism or skepticism, but not even that. Of just like trying to keep one foot in the real world while I keep one foot in this spiritual alternative world as well. And it's an experience that like, yeah, Nadi, Sarah, so many of my friends have had as well. And they're saying the same thing. Okay, like, yeah, what I was taught in university, and this materialism and this idea that we know everything and that it's so obvious, and you know, all this, like, life is very realism, and that's it, what we see is what we get, kind of a thing. And then going back out into the real world and trying to, like, as I say, like, decondition yourself from that. And not only that, but yeah, how do you marry them together? It's not one without the other, you know, like this, what we kind of, you know, what an academic would consider woo-woo or mystical or whatever is just a lot of people's, like, day-to-day real life, you know, like, it's not this, you know, fairy tale mythological picture book thing that you study. Like, that's how they live their lives, you know, and that's what they believe in. And Nadi made a really good comment, because we were speaking specifically from, like, a biologist perspective of that journey that you tend to have of you know, growing up in probably a Christian or maybe some kind of, like, Christian light household, to going into atheism because you're like, I don't believe in God, smart people don't believe in God, you know, none of these clever academics believe in God, and then going back out in the world again and being like, actually, like, I don't know anything anymore, you know, I'm very life. And she made the comment that inside every biologist is a little animist, and I was like, that's exactly it. And I had this conversation with another friend who said, actually, most of the people that are in academia that consider themselves atheists or whatever are usually people that are sitting at a computer all day long. They're not the people out in the real world talking to people, you know, in the nature, working with animals, working with trees, whatever it is. And yet it's like those people are scared to have their beliefs because they won't be taken seriously by academia. Right. You know, it's this really, like, again, it feels like we're in our infancy of, like, how are these coming back together again? Like, how are we marrying them back together again? Because they've been separate for way too long, and that's just not how life works at all. And yeah, as you say, like, taking it down to an even smaller scale of, I feel like the hypocrisy, or at least the irony that I see of so many people that are so, like, yoga or this and that or whatever, and yet their, like, habits and the way they connect with people or don't connect with people very well. I'm like, you're not taking anything that you've learned from your yoga mat or your ceremony. You know, I have friends that, like, sit in ceremony over and over and over again. I'm like, you've got the message, you know, you need to now integrate, do something with it, you know what you need to do. You know, like, you've had the download, you've been given the information. That's not it. Like, the hard work is the grind, the mundane, the monotony, like living in a crazy society, you know, seeing like apartment buildings outside your window, and, you know, having to go to work every day and pick up your dog shit and, you know, pay your bills and stuff. Like, that is the hard work. And it's funny because I feel like the people that are in that kind of more fluffy spiritual part of their life, it's so exciting to enter into that for the first time. I get it. Like, I was there as well. Have you seen that meme that's like spirituality starter pack, and it's like chakras and incense and stuff, and then like mature spirituality is just a ciggy and a cup of coffee? Like,
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like having one foot in both places as well has given me, like, it's allowed me to, stay a bit more humble in that fluffy space. Maybe too much sometimes, you know, like, I could have, and I still feel like what's the right way to put it? Not a wound. It's like baggage that I carry that I can't really release from a level of cynicism that I hold about certain things, because I still have that little voice in my head that's like, academic people don't believe in blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, but I've seen it, you know, I've seen it with my own eyes. How can I get rid of that voice? But yeah, I wanted to ask you though, now that you're coming up with your new business, and I assume you've been hosting workshops and you've been in this kind of women's workspace for a while. What was your progression to being from, like, kind of a consumer of it to someone that is in a place of, like, teaching workshops or running events? Like, was it, have you always been this kind of confident with speaking and presenting your ideas, or was it more of a gradual drift? Did you feel ready at a moment, or it just kind of was forced upon you? Yeah. How was your journey into that role?
You know, I sort of was always trying to think back to like the earliest iterations. I guess the maybe earlier iterations were running women's circles at the very beginning. Um, yeah, that's probably how it all started, was like running women's circles that grew and, monthly into monthly spaces. And um, I think that was my first big step, and it didn't take long for me in a previous iteration of my business to start doing some workshops. I think because I was teaching university and
Mm.
doing a lot of presenting and teaching in the academic space, the presentation side of things like didn't carry any fear for me.
Hmm.
I think I just am a person, like I'm kind of one of those freaks that actually really loves public speaking and loves, I like thrive on like being in a lecture hall, like talking and sharing ideas and so um yeah, so I didn't have that personal hurdle of like, oh my God, like the facilitating or being seen. But it's definitely been a progression, like a learning progression in terms of, what is really mine to teach, what is really like my core message. And I think there's been a lot of like trying on different things, like our women's circles, what I really want to do.
Yeah.
Like that was like a toe dipping, and I've like explored all different topics and iterations. And I think in this maturation process, it's just been a process of like refinement and like really getting to the heart of like what is really my soul mission, like what is really my like deep truth that I am here to share, and blocking out all of the noise and like the what I should share and what like blah blah blah. It's been like, yeah, a real like homecoming
Mm.
to what is really like alive in me. What are the consistencies and patterns over time that my like deep truth, and not being in a rush. The previous iteration of my business, I've sort of phased out of, for the last like 3 or 4 years. Finished my PhD a few years ago and have taken my time in the last few years to really, like, really deeply sit with and ensure that like what I am rebirthing into the world now is like of my highest integrity and like of my deepest core learning. And I'm not rushing to um, I'm not rushing to share something that's not um, like really what I should be sharing in
Yeah.
my deepest truth. Yeah.
What is the new business that you're launching?
Yeah. So this is the Institute for Visionary Women, and it's really like, it's sort of the culmination of this process, what I was talking about, of like bringing my two selves together. Like my previous business, The Wild Divine, was much more um, it was like a lesser iteration of what I'm doing now, but like a less mature version, perhaps.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, a different essence. And so this is, I think now I've sort of stopped living the double life of like, these two sides of me, and have fully, in the, like when I was just in a lot of women's spaces, there was a part of me that really wanted to shun my intellectual academic self, and
Yeah.
really wanted to, was existing in a context where like, I think in a lot of spiritual circles, there's like a demonization of like the mind and the intellect. And that's really enmeshed with like the system and the
Yeah.
matrix. And like, it's like, there's this real like turning away from that. Um, and of course, in academic spaces, I was often like the black sheep who's writing about like weird and crazy concepts, and, doing outlandish research. So like, for me, I think the Institute for Visionary Women is really like a new model of change making that is grounded in somatic, um, like feminine power and leadership, and really taking a completely like merging the two sides of me and merging the two bodies of work that I've been developing for a decade, and like living my truth fully at that intersection. And yeah, so that's in the launch stages now, and really exciting to be finally bringing this work out in the world.
Is it courses that women will be doing with you, or what's the format of the offerings that you're doing?
Yeah, so it will be courses. The Visionary Woman is the first course that will launch. That's mostly a self-paced course, a little bit of a live component. The Heroine's Journey is another deep dive container of working with me, like live in a more intimate container. That's an offering that has gone through a few iterations over the years that I've refined into something I think is really exciting. I love also running in-person workshops and retreats, but I think right now in this chapter of life and wanting to, you know, live more fluidly between here in Australia and the States, I'll be primarily online. But I do love like a really immersive retreat experience. That's absolutely something that will happen in the future. I love gathering with women in person. It's kind of like my favorite thing to do ever. Yeah.
So you continue.
I'll also be launching a Substack this year as well. So that'll be like longer form writing. Like in my heart of hearts, I'm a writer, as you know, and so I'm really excited for that as well.
What are women going to be walking away with after they finish one of your courses? Like, what do you hope for women to feel or to walk away with? Is it like a new skill, or they'll be empowered in a different, give us a little bit of a background on that.
I think women will walk away with a deeper sense of clarity, meaning, and purpose for themselves, and the way that they can uniquely be of service to the world. So like you touched on earlier, like your experience of coming into this realization that like your method of change is, as a woman in the world, just how you're walking your walk and how you're serving your family and your community. And so a visionary woman is any woman, from a stay-at-home mom to a corporate businesswoman. There is no role required. There is no level of engagement or activism in the world you need to, in order to be a visionary. So to me, being a visionary is a woman who is completely activated, alive, in service to herself, her family, and the world. So I think a lot of my work is about really understanding and clarifying this model and method of change making in the world, this very inside out way of engaging with the world. And on a personal level, it's like clarifying your deep mission statement and, you know, clarifying your vessel. And so I think women walk away from my work with clarity, with inspiration, with passion, with a new sense of devotion and, you know, feeling themselves in the whole, and feeling like really alive and renewed. Like it's definitely a space of inspiration and vision rather than like cynicism and despair. So
so needed, because I feel like we just don't have anything. We don't have a collective framework for how we interact with the world or how we see the world anymore. I feel like we're all kind of like floating around, and some people are dabbling with this and dabbling with that, but there's not this kind of like strong cultural, like, this is how we do what we do. This is how you, and I guess I'm thinking particularly of like the maiden years that in our culture are like the fun party time and self-discovery for sure, but maybe through like a lot of mistaking or a lot of like heartbreak and hurt and potentially hurting people around you, as opposed, and not to say that that's wrong, but it feels like our maiden years have gone all the way to our like mid-30s, where like a lot of it should in a way kind of be like teenage behavior that you get out of your system, and then you can spend your 20s having a good time, obviously, but also like coming to more of a space of, coming home to yourself, coming home to your community, coming home to like how you can be of service and feel well and whole. So when you are moving into the mothering years, whether that's with children or not, you're coming ready, you're not coming with like without any kind of initiation into those years or information or knowledge or grounding or stability for yourself to then handle. Like the mothering years are much more mature, grounded years, but they're also really hard years. If you're birthing a business, it's hard fucking work, and you've got to keep your shit together in order to get that baby out and that baby running and working, and you've got to have a lot of energy to give it. Same if you're raising a family, same if you're looking after your parents or whatever's happening in that time of your life. It's just, these things are so needed. And I'm so happy someone like you is doing something like this, especially online. I feel like, although you're missing like the in-person relation, it's making it accessible on a level that you just can't like do in person feasibly in one place anymore. So you've been off Instagram for a couple of years, I think I saw. Was that intentional? Were you lurking at all, or you were like completely off, like you never looked at it at all?
Completely off, like app deleted, gone. It was semi-intentional. It was an aspiration of mine to go completely off Instagram, and then it kind of came to this overwhelming place. It was the time of my wedding. I was like completely exhausted from putting on like a 3-day festival wedding, and just sort of was like, felt the urge. This is the time. It was also the time that my old business was closed, and so it was a natural hibernation time for me. And I think to be able to be in this creative portal of creating the Institute for Visionary Women required me to stay away from the noise. Like I really felt this need to cocoon myself and take myself through the heroine's journey that I teach, and like really refine and understand consciously, like, what it is that I'm here to share without being in the chaos of Instagram and other people's offerings. And it felt really important for me to step back from that space. And I'm not excited to be back. Like I downloaded the app like literally yesterday and was like, whoa, okay. And I think it's changed in the last couple of years. Like it's even more like a marketplace, and like everyone is like, doing their thing and selling their thing. And it's like chaos. It reminds me of being like in a market in India, and I'm like, oh my God, holy shit, this is like everyone's like yelling at me and like trying to sell me stuff. And so like it's definitely a lot to be back, but it's necessary. Like this is our world. So
totally. I know. And it's a free marketing tool, like we don't have to pay for advertising. I mean, you can obviously, but like it is a free platform for us to use to get our stuff out there. But I've been really craving getting off it, and I can't because of work, and I feel this like kind of a bit shackled to it, and it's my own shit as well. Like you go on there and I'll like start scrolling, and then I get off it and I'm like, fuck, I didn't even go in and do the thing that I was supposed to do, like make the post or update whatever it was, like I just went straight to scrolling. And I've just been feeling really strongly like I don't want to be there anymore. And yet like there isn't, we don't have another avenue to get our offerings out, and to like create community. We've been really focusing on our WhatsApp community, which is, funneling people from Instagram into WhatsApp, which they can dip in it if they like, but as a more direct means of like relating to people and saying like, you already have your kind of target market in a little WhatsApp group, and most of your offerings will land, and people will be interested in there. But then again, it's like a closed echo chamber, you know, like you're not getting new, it's hard to get new people in there. I started doing a course, and I've been really enjoying like being specifically in like the forums of that course, like the student dashboard of that course, and just like getting away from like the rest of the noise. But again, like, I don't know how we disentangle ourselves from it. It's a really love-hate relationship. Like, it's, you know, Shaka, my husband, I keep referring to him, but he started a new business as well recently, and it's gone really well because of Instagram. Like, truly just because of Instagram, he's been able to like now work from home and be present with us as a family, and like be with the kids, and be, you know, he like baby started crying, like he can just take her straight away even though he's in the middle of doing something. And yeah, none of that would be possible without social media. I was laughing yesterday with some friends. We were thinking of starting a new business idea, and our target market is not like, it's like 30 plus, 30 to 60-year-olds. I'm like, are these people even on Instagram anymore? And then we're like, they're on Facebook. These oldies are still on Facebook. Like, we need to go back to Facebook and just like get off Instagram for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah. It's chicken. I was excited to hear that you're going to be using Substack. I know a lot of people have moved to Substack, and I've also been really enjoying like longer, slower media. Obviously, it's not as like quick, fast paced as like scrolling through Instagram, but like I've really been enjoying reading more, especially like hearing someone's full idea, not like a 5-second reel where they're trying to like get your attention and hook you in and do all these tricks and, you know, stuff to make you stay on their page. Instead, like allowing someone the space to fully formulate what they want to share and the idea that they have or the concept that they're working on, and really get into the depth of it. Feels really refreshing at the moment.
Right. It's like, I think that's it. It's like you're speaking to like smaller communities, like WhatsApp communities and course communities, and that, I think closer knit communities and longer form content are like the pendulum swing after this like TikTok, Instagram hook crazed world we've been living in, especially for us who are millennials who did not like, you know, we did not grow up with the internet and social media until much later in our teen years. And so it's like, I think especially for our age group, like it is a little bit exhausting and overwhelming, and we have a memory in our bodies and minds of like what it feels like to be in community or have an actual conversation or like read long form content. And I think there's like a real craving for that right now in response to this like crazy like TikTok dance culture that like we're not built for that. Like our brains are not built for that. So I'm really excited to see the explosion of Substack, and I'm really excited to get into it because I love writing longer form, like essay style content, and that's what I love reading. Like you, like I love reading that. Like I love exactly what you said, like sitting with someone's like whole sharing, and just like I'd rather have one long form piece of content for my day than like scroll past like 100 like 10-second videos, you know. So, but yeah, it's like we can't live without Instagram. So it's just like engaging it in the ways that feel healthy and trying to like maintain like not a toxic relationship with it, which is not easy to do, but
really.
Yeah.
So you're like just about to start and launch everything. Is that right? Or it's going to be like drip fed, or what's the kind of launch process looking like for you?
Yeah, so I'm just starting my new Instagram now, like literally one post yesterday. So this is the very beginning of that. And my website is up, a few little back end fixes, but so it'll be like gradual. My first course won't be launched for another few months. So yeah, it's like a little bit of a drip feed process over the next 6 months or so to get everything completely online. It's been a massive undertaking to create the whole vision and the content, and also like mostly just the marketing and the back end of Kajabi, like swimming around in funnels and tags and you know, like that, like learning the whole language and of marketing, of business, of Kajabi, of all of it. So that's
Yeah.
been a lot of the last couple of years for me, is like, oh, I need basically like a degree in marketing now. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's been a
I know.
lot of my time.
And then it's that funny thing as well of, it's really thanks to these like straightforward, easy AI platforms and AI, ChatGPT and stuff, that we can even do these things on our own, that we don't have to spend even more money paying, someone for graphics and someone for a website and someone for this and someone for that. And it is given space for like small businesses to flourish and become a thing. And yet, like, I'm sure you have the same, but I have like an aversion to like AI, like it's when I use it,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, but also it's making my
Yeah.
life so much easier. And again, like finding a healthy relationship with doing it. I feel like at the start I was using it for everything, like even really simple things that I could have Googled, and I've like moved away from doing that. And I'm trying, not even trying, I just naturally use it for the more challenging things that I don't feel like I have time for in that moment, like rewriting this email automation or checking my contract that I wrote or whatever it is, and trying not to use it for like really basic shit. But it's, again, a love-hate relationship of this incredible tool that we have at our fingertips in 2026 that allows us to have our ideas come out into the world and build these amazing things. And yet it also feels weird.
Yeah. I feel like like I'm like a newbie in the AI. Like, I don't know, like something about it like freaks me out, and I like
Yeah.
don't really I don't really like get it, and I'm like, what do
Yeah.
I do with this? It's kind of like, yeah, it's I don't know, the whole like concept of AI kind of freaks me out. I'm like, are we tumbling into like a Westworld situation? Like, if I use ChatGPT, am I gonna um will my consciousness be hijacked? Like, I don't know. I'm so yeah, I am definitely like a toe dipper in that space, but I totally agree that it is like, it's beautiful that it's been a huge productivity tool. And like, I feel that way with YouTube, with like my deep gratitude to YouTube for how much I've learned from watching people's free YouTube videos on like how
Yeah.
to build your funnels in Kajabi, and like how to do your automation sequences. Like, I feel like I just live on like YouTube videos to implement like every step of my business. I'm like, oh, okay, time for another 10-minute YouTube video, and then like go back and do my funnel building. And I just like, every step obviously takes like 10 minutes because I'm constantly learning and implementing and learning and implementing. But yeah, I feel like such immense gratitude to be starting a business in an era where there's so much free education, and there's like just this explosion of people just, yeah, giving answers to questions and help in the world that was not possible not that long ago.
I know, and I'm scared of how quickly I adjusted to AI being normal as well. I remember when it first came out, I was like, what the fuck? Like 4 years ago. And now I'm like, I don't even think about it. I mean, every now and again, I'm like, that's so weird that it can do this thing, but I'm not really blown away by it anymore. In fact, I'm annoyed when it doesn't correctly, Hey, you idiot. Like, yeah. My business partner in Fungi, he was like, we were talking this morning about doing some pages, and he's like, yeah, I can just connect Claude, which is another AI, to our Elementor, like our WordPress thing, and it can do it by itself. I was like, what? Don't do
Yeah,
that.
I've heard of this.
I know. I was like, I can't. I'm like, I know it's going to make our life easier, and probably everyone's going to be doing it within the next year or so. But right now, I'm like, is it just going to hijack our website? Like, what's it going to do? I don't know.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
weird.
I feel like a little bit of like a grandmother in the technology space. Like, I feel like when the iPhone came out and my grandmother was like really afraid of it, and all
Yeah.
the kids, like, like me, I was like, what do you mean it's just an iPhone? Like, here's how to use it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel it's like a little bit like that with, yeah, like someone was just telling me the other day about like Claude, or is it a coworker, or I don't co something, and about how you can connect, I don't really know how it works. I don't know how any of this works, but you can like make some AI robot like make your, like do your like calendars and websites and stuff for you. And was like, wow, that sounds like really convenient and like also so terrifying.
Totally.
Like, are we going to lose our autonomy and lose our, oh, that's just like such a huge other big
Yeah,
conversation.
it's
But
a whole other world. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
feel it as well in the same sense of um I'm feeling more repelled by the, as what we spoke about, the kind of clickbaity quick spaces, and way more, and like literally when I bought this course that I'm doing, it's the first time I've invested that amount of money in a course in a really long time, because I really was like, I don't want information in my face constantly all the time. Like I really want to go deep on something for the first time since I left university. And I've been really feeling like I want to be in person again. I miss connecting with people and what we were talking about earlier about that third space of like, why aren't we, making more of an effort? I mean, we see our friends all the time, but it's these days with kids and life and engagements and everything, even with friends that you have a very deep connection with, it can stay at a superficial conversation level just because by virtue of like your time or, whatever is distracting you in that moment or whatever's happening. And, it's not really until we literally go camping and we're completely disconnected from the world that you sit for hours with your friends and just talk to each other. And I just, it's so craving and just so desiring to, create more of that in life at the moment, and to just like, have this presence that I didn't really realize how much I'd offloaded to social media. Like, of course, it's so obvious to say that, but I hadn't really reflected on how much I'd done that out of convenience or just like circumstance in life right now, and just desiring to really put more effort into being like, no, let's see people, let's like meet with people. I think I also, when you have limited time and you're working on things so much, like every minute you want to be putting towards this thing, and you don't remember how nourishing it is to like just sit with your sisters and sit with your friends and sit with your mates or your partner. Like, fuck, like me and Shaka don't even spend that much time together these days anymore, and we're in the same house with each other all the time.
yeah,
And to remember to like just put the brakes on every now and again, and like, go for the walk, go to nature, go see your friends, go sit by the fire, and just like be a human being in the world again for a second, and come back with some energy, and not this like kind of like go, go, go burnout vibe that we're all carrying so much at the moment.
yeah, so much. I think I have to remind myself consciously to do that, especially right now, because yeah, my life is so full of like so much creation. I'm writing a book, I'm launching a business, like
Yeah.
I'm living as a human in the world. And I can slip so easily, I guess, like as a former academic, especially, like I can slip so easily into this like hyper productive mode. And it is so destructive to me and to our culture, to everyone. I'm just living out this like capitalist cultural like efficiency narrative in my own body. And I have to consciously remind myself, like even to go for walks without a podcast sometimes, or like without
Yeah.
a book. Like it's like, oh, I
Yes.
want to jam in, I want to multitask, and like while I'm going for my forest walk, I'll also listen to this podcast. And it's so slippery, and being like, no, 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 I actually just need to go like walk in the forest and look at the trees and like like take things away from my mind and my attention.
Yeah.
And just learn how to be present in this world, which is so much harder and harder to do, to actually just exist in presence and like exist in my body in the world. So yeah, it's like it's conscious work, honestly, to get
Yeah.
out of that.
Which is seems so, it's so funny that we have to like put effort into doing those things now as well,
Right?
the
Yeah.
world we're living in.
Right?
Um,
Yeah.
what's next for you this year? Obviously, you're launching your business.
Oh, I think you're frozen for me. Let me see if it comes back. You're still frozen. I don't know if you can hear or see me. Oh, okay. Wait, I think you're back. You're back. You're back.
That was my internet. Yeah, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Yeah, just really this launch, which is really going to take me probably, another 6 months or so. I mean, I have many things planned. I've got like 4-5 different courses planned, eventually a facilitator training. So I've got like, I'm not really one to like have a 5-year plan. That makes me anxious, but I at least like, I have a lot planned out in terms of, a lot of aspirations and visions, I'll just say, that may or may not come to fruition, who knows, but definitely on the cards for this year is just, launching these offerings and growing my community, which I'm super excited to see who shows up to this work and who shows up to my spaces. And I can't wait to engage with people and talk to people and just like be with women in community again. So I'm really looking forward to that.
So good. And is there anything that you want to mention that we didn't cover, or anything you want to bring up?
No, I mean, I could just like keep chatting to you for a couple of hours more, I bet, but I think we covered a lot of bases. And
yeah, I haven't even gone deep on all the other stuff yet, but yeah.
Oh, so much. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Josie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Millie, in this space, and thank you to FERA. And yeah, I'm so excited for your platform and for this community that you've built. So super grateful to be a part of it and to have this chat.
Yeah, you too. And thank you for your masterclass as well. Again, I really highly recommend it. It was by far our most popular so far, and people keep going to it and downloading it. So I'll put the link in this YouTube description as well. And I can't wait for your launch and to just see where this is all going to go. And I know you've put so much heart and soul and work, and yeah, it sounds incredible. Like I can't wait to see it come to life. Thank you so much, Josie.
Thank you. Thanks, Millie.